Day 308 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. And as always, I'll start off with those Russian military losses as we continue to take a look at the exhaustion of the Russian forces. So as of the 28th of December 2022, currently sitting on 103,770, so an additional 550 Russian military personnel losses as of today. And now in terms of the hardware losses for the Russian side, one tank, a whopping 13 armored combat vehicles as well, so yeah, quite a big day for Russian ACV losses to say the least. Then we'll move back to the map, and again, as we sometimes do, a lot more now than ever, is start out in the Russian country of Russia itself, the Russian motherland. And I'll quickly jump across to, so you might remember Engels air base struck by a couple of drones from Ukraine a couple of days ago. Well, now Russian forces have been forced to move 6 of their Tu-T95S strategic bombers from Engels Air Base to another airbase about 3,000 miles away across to the east of the country. And this is all due to recent successful Ukrainian strikes on Engels Air Base, twice in fact, in this month alone. And now, due to these most recent Ukrainian drone strikes from about 48 hours ago, it's been reported that potentially 5 Russian Tu-95MSs, these strategic bombers, have been damaged as a result, which has in turn greatly hampered Russia's ability to perform large salvos of missile airstrikes on Ukrainian infrastructure recently. And now this is Ukraine's latest approach in response to Russia's large missile strikes it does every couple or a few weeks or so, and it is to neutralize not just defensively through air defense systems planted in Ukraine, but also to begin to neutralize Russia's airstrike capability by offensively striking at Russian air bases now as well. And this is just some really all-around positive news. Fantastic to see that long-range capability once again. Then still in Russia to the far east in Siberia, if it lets me zoom out that far. So a column of Russian tanks was spotted heading west from Russia's Siberian region to Ukraine. Or, put another way, Russia is continuing to demilitarize themselves, particularly on their east coast. A location that may no longer be able to project military power from that region, or even support itself now militarily from a defensive standpoint due to Russia depleting their own hardware stocks on that side of the country. Then just lastly, in the Russian Oblast, or the country today, so in the Rostov Oblast, which is just right next to the Donbass in Ukraine, so a brand new barracks in this oblast is on fire. So as reported by locals, the barracks in the military unit, which belonged to the 150th Division, completely burned down here. Someone doesn't want to go to war. Then we'll move across onto the Ukrainian map itself, and we'll start out in the northern Donbass, so that is the Luhansk Oblast in particular. Now, let's see, okay, so there are red-hot battles taking place here in Ploshchanka. So this location right here, pretty much just on the west of the P66 highway. And this is likely as a result of Russia shelling the location, really likely from settlements just beyond the east of the P66 highway there. And that's really interesting to me because topographically, well, just note here, Russia basically everywhere on this map throughout the entirety of Ukraine is fighting an uphill battle. I mean, like I say, take a look here, anywhere here really topographically at this location, you can see that just the way that the not really mountainous regions, but the sloping agenda of the geography into the downward sloping Russian direction there. Then moving across a little bit further south in this region, so a little bit of an update here for Crimea. So heavy battles continue near Crimea. Russian forces continue to divert huge amounts of reinforcements to the area, because they know that Ukraine, or the Ukrainian armed forces, have quite the offensive element in this region now. In fact, Ukrainian recon units have already made it very close to the outskirts of the city of Crimea. But why is the liberation of Crimea so important, you might ask? Well, the city is of strategic importance since it will allow the main roads to Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, and I'll just zoom out to show you those ones there in this region here. So allow these settlements to be taken under Ukrainian artillery fire control. Then we'll move down a little bit further. Next up, we'll start out in, say, Soledar, so another heavily contested front line here. So although heavy fighting exists here, Ukrainian forces are continuing to stop advances from Russian forces for months now. Just unbelievable Ukrainian defensive lines here. I'm very proud of that. Then moving across to Bakhmut, or really the south, so intense battles continue taking place in Opitny, which, like I said, is just south of the city of Bakhmut there. And the Ukrainian defenders are currently repelling Russian frontal assaults towards Bakhmut, just as that arrow right there indicates. Then just very briefly in the south of the Donbass, so let's see, Marinka, these regions here, Volodar, those sorts of places, over the past couple of days, fairly quiet, particularly from the Russian forces side, where they seem to have ceased their massive, or stopped their massive onslaughts of attacks in this southern region pretty much in its entirety. Perhaps it's too cold, perhaps they've run out of cannon fodder, perhaps low morale, perhaps a lot of things for the Russian side there that isn't working to their advantage right now. Then we'll move across to the Zaporizhzhia Oblast. So Ukrainian artillery is working heavily on Russian positions along the Zaporizhzhia front line today. And the night in Zaporizhzhia turned out to be pretty hot here. So the armed forces of Ukraine attacked the Russian positions in Tokmak, Berdyansk, Melitopol, and the Chernivka areas too. And some of these areas that Ukraine hit are by no means frontline locations, quite deep within. We are talking HIMARS and things of that nature there in order to reach some of these locations, that's for sure. Then we'll move across to the Kherson Oblast, where the Russian army shelled the maternity ward of the hospital in nearby Kherson city there. Well, fortunately, nobody was hurt, but biggest dick move you can find. I don't care if it's indiscriminate, accidental. It's not even the first time they've done this, of course. A few months ago, highly publicized. It happened in Zaporizhzhia as well. So it's, just not cool. These really are the bad guys. To put a dualistic term of phrase into all of this here today. And so anyway, in return, the AFU hit multiple Russian accumulation points and warehouses in Kakhovka, which is just south of Dnipro over here. In fact, as you can see, indicated by one of the oinky pigs, this one here. Whoop, lost my spot. And then Nova Kakhovka as well, which is just below the bridge, the dam bridge there. That damn bridge. And lastly, Holopristan, which is just really opposite Kherson city itself, where most of the population exists here in the Ukrainian liberated side, which is good to see. And just lastly, very briefly, somewhere along the Mykolaiv coast, in the Mykolaiv Oblast, an enemy sea mine exploded on the coast there. It's reported though that no one was injured as a result of the detonation, so good to see. Then move across to some of the news for today. So Putin and Uncle Luka caught up at a regional summit in St. Petersburg today, as Russia continues to wage its brutal war against Ukraine. And so the two claim to have agreed on many issues. At the summit. And to say that they agreed on many issues is a bit vague. They really didn't get into it more, what those many issues were that they agreed on, as they attempt to continue to visually show the world a united front between the two nations in particular. Then in some other news, so Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov is at it again with his strong wordsmanship. So this time he said in an interview that, quote, if Ukraine does not comply with Russian demands and continues senseless resistance, then its demilitarization will be ensured by the Russian army. So this is a head scratcher here. So in other words, he's saying surrender to our invasion attempts or we'll continue to attempt to invade, which is not a very persuasive argument. I also love the irony in all of this because where Lavrov said that the demilitarization of Ukraine will be ensured by the Russian army, because Ukraine is currently one of the most militarized countries on the planet now, purely because of Russia's invading. Talk about a backfiring military strategy of an invasion. Then in some other news, Pavel Antov, a Russian oligarch and member of the Legislative Assembly, fell out of a window on the 24th of December. And coincidentally, just 2 days earlier, another Russian colleague of his died in the exact same hotel. Also, not to be outdone by that, another oligarch by the name of Alexander Buzakov, which is the director of, the Director General of the Admiralty shipyards. So basically places that do Russian military or produce Russian military submarines, also died in suspicious circumstances on the 24th of December as well. So here we have oligarchs that are legislators and businessmen who deal with military-related business that, as per usual, they likely didn't toe the line, politically speaking, and thus were eliminated. Really dropping like flies, and I'm reminded of a Game of Thrones quote there somewhere. Then in another Russian military mobilization blunder, this is basically what happens when you mobilize hundreds of thousands of untrained men into war. They're simply unprepared, and in this case getting yelled at for not being prepared through no fault of their own. You see, you need at least 10 weeks of full-time training to get to basic soldier levels, and 6 months will get you a pretty decent soldier. Time neither of which Russia has, as it continuously sends men to the front line as cannon fodder, with the goal to achieve one thing and one thing only: to hold the line. And the reason why they want to hold the line so much, really from a mostly defensive standpoint, is because it has become such a political embarrassment for Russia on the international stage, and they know this. Embarrassment that they continue to lose large swaths of land in this war, time after time. Obviously, we had areas in the Donbass recently. Before that, Kherson, Kharkiv. Before that, Sumy. The Blitzkrieg, or the failed Blitzkrieg in the capital of Kyiv. So all of those places just lost, and thus liberated by Ukraine. Then a bit of a funny to round it off. So actually, I'm not sure if this one should be in the funny section, so I'll do two. But in this first funny, there's still a lot of buzz around about Russian financial institutions not allowing customers to withdraw their funds. Take, for instance, this clip of a guy at an ATM machine in the Russian motherland. The money is not coming out for this guy, and he is just furious, yelling, "Give me my money!" And then he goes on to swear a bit. Then he tells the other guys lining up, "There's no money in there." So the deeper political or economic-wide country problem here for Russia is that those funds are now frozen, or rather tied up to fund Putin's war efforts, of which Putin says 99.9% of Russians support. Somehow I doubt that. And so I will certainly continue to follow this particular story, as it really could be Russia's own financial sector that leads to their demise in the end. Then a second funny is the first one. Wasn't sure if I should pop it in the funny section. So let me know if that one's okay. And so in this next funny, so the AFU recruited Santa Claus and taught him how to deliver 82mm gifts. So these are the 82mm HE, otherwise known as high explosive mortar projectiles, with a range of about, generally it depends, but about 3 miles or about 5 kilometers. Obviously not as long as the bigger artillery pieces. And it's just a very spirited thing to watch, isn't it? So that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button. Again, thanks for all of the support, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.